Welcome back to PSC's Tech Bytes. Today I want to start a new series of videos about how to manage resources in Azure with the Bicep language. Bicep is a domain-specific language which has been built on top of the ARM Azure Resource Management JSON templates and which allows you to define more complex scenarios like provisioning templates of Azure resources using variables, parameters, parameter files, output variables and stuff like that. It is really developer-oriented with an extension for Visual Studio Code which allows you to have intelligence, refactoring, renaming, snippets and stuff like that. When you use it, you can deploy a Bicep file either using the Azure Cloud Shell or the Azure CLI on your machine or Azure PowerShell or even Visual Studio Code if you like. Let's try to understand why you should be interested into Bicep compared with Azure ARM JSON templates. Well, actually, as I already said, Bicep is built on top of ARM templates. And the idea is to make it more concise, more expressive and modular, so a better solution built on top of ARM templates. Moreover, at the very end, Bicep is just a transpiler, so at the very end there will be a build process which will still generate a JSON ARM template for you. But you can use a more expressive language and more developer-oriented language to create such kind of JSON templates. Let me say that it is somehow like TypeScript with JavaScript if we want to make an example. So, when you use Bicep, you can also do orchestration of tasks. You can define the ordering and the dependencies of the resources when you deploy them. So, it is really powerful. Last but not least, it is completely open to changes. In fact, whenever there will be updates in the ARM templates or in the Azure provisioning APIs, Bicep will get updated on the go because it has been built open and transparent compared to the backend ARM template engine. So, that said, let me move to the demo environment and let me show you how to play with Bicep. So let's imagine that you want to deploy an Azure function with an app service plan, an application insights, and a storage account. This is a Bicep file that you can use for that purpose. As you can see right here, you can easily define parameters. Here, for example, I have a parameter for the location and I can automatically read the location of the resource group in which I'm going to execute this Bicep script. You can define as many parameters as you like and you can place them in the Bicep file, then the engine will properly order them when needed. Then you can also define variables. Here, for example, I'm defining a variable which will hold the name of the storage account that I'm going to create. Notice that one of my parameters is the prefix that I want to use for all of my resources. So I can use the interpolation of strings in Bicep and I can interpolate the resource prefix with a unique string which will be generated based on the ID of the resource group in which I am. Then I can configure an additional variable for the storage account type that I want to use, and then I can simply create a resource which will be called storage account, which will be of this type. And notice that right here after the act we can specify the version of the API that we want to use in Bicep, and then we can configure the object which will define the storage account that will be created. And as you can see here again in the properties we can reference variables or parameters that we define in the Bicep file. Moreover, I'm defining an application insight name which I will use to create a resource of type application insights. And again, I define with string interpolation the name that I will use, and then I'm going to target Microsoft.insights, and I want to create an application insight instance with these input parameters. And the same applies for the hosting plan, same logic as before. Then when we create the Azure function, we can again define a couple of variables for the Azure function itself. And then in the definition of the Azure function, when we create it, we can specify properties which will come through the dot experience will come from object resources that we have already provisioned. So for example, here I'm creating a resource which will be called hosting plan and which will be the app service plan under the cover of my Azure function. Well, here, when I need to specify the server farm ID attribute of my function, I can simply reference the resource hosting plan that I just created and get the ID of the resource that I created before. The same can be done, for example, in the app settings, where I need to reference the storage account. Well, I have the storage account name, but I also have the storage account that I created, and I can get, for example, the account key of that storage account that I just created in order to properly configure the connection string in the settings, app settings of my Azure function. I can do the same for as many app settings as I like, including, for example, the reference to the application insight instrumentation key or the connection string. And here again you can see application insight is actually the resource that I created right here using Bicep, and then I'm referencing the properties of that resource and specifically the instrumentation key and the connection string. As well as you can configure as many app settings as you like, so custom settings and stuff like that. Once you are done, for example, you can have an output variable which will be the default host name of the function app that got created. Now, if you want to play with this Bicep file, you can do many things. One can be to just build the JSON ARM template which corresponds to this Bicep file. So, if you go here in the terminal, you can simply say az bicep build -- file, and you will provide the Bicep file you want to process. By running this command, you will get back the JSON ARM template that you would have to write in case you want to manually generate the JSON template. But you can do more. If you switch to Azure and you open the Cloud Shell, you can upload your Bicep file to the Azure Cloud Shell, and then you can execute a command like the following one. For example, I can say paste, and I'm going to use az deployment group create in the resource group where I am. I want to use the template file that I just uploaded, and I want to provide as the resources prefix parameter value PRSysTech by 01 PTB01. So as you can see now, the Bicep template is already running because I executed it from my Cloud Shell, and in a matter of few seconds we will see all of the resources popping up in my resource group. And here we are. The template has been provisioned, so I can refresh my resource group content, and we can see that we have the services that we created. Actually, in a matter of few seconds, we will see also the Azure function popping up. You can do that either using the Cloud Shell, using the Azure CLI or Azure PowerShell, or even using Visual Studio Code. You can right-click on a Bicep file and say deploy Bicep file. Like always, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.